And hello to everyone that's tuning in today. Hey, you're listening to Car Musings, and I'm your host, Matt Morgan. How is everybody doing today? It's been a good day. How's your integrity? You keeping it in check? Anyways, hey, before I forget, new articles up on themadmorgan.com. I have a silent ghostwriter, a contributor. Nobody that I actually approached to do this, but somebody that just reached out to me one day and said, hey, I want to write articles, you know, for you, helpful articles along the lines of your mission, along the lines of, what you do when it comes to helping people. And they're like, hey, Mad Morgan, would you be interested? And I'm like, okay. So, I'm a little cautious. I always am. Want to make sure that everything's on the up and up. So, anyways, I check this stuff out. These articles are completely genuine, completely selfless, and just to help people. And I love that. I love to find, other like minded individuals that do that basically just to help people for the sake of helping people at no profitability to themselves. And the reason I know this is because this article is well written. These are really well written articles, and they do have links in them. So, being the investigator that I am, because, you would expect no less from me. Um, yeah, these are legit links. They're not clickbaity links. They're not pointing to some referral affiliate program, nothing like that. And I'm like completely, wow. So this guy or girl, I'm not sure. It's hard to tell because the name is kind of foreign, but it's just amazing that, people do this. And I love to find like-minded individuals. I guess, birds of a feather flock together. Anyways, there's another article up there. Check it out. They were very adamant. My little ghostwriter here was very adamant about me getting it up there because I was a little delayed. Because as if you've been listening long enough, I have a lot on the go. But they were very much adamant about the fact that I was delayed on this, and they were getting upset with me. And I'm like, whoa, hang on for 1 second. I'm not making anything off this. But I understand you're taking the time to write these articles, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Anyways, all that aside, yeah, very much. I want to congratulate, not necessarily congratulate, but thank my ghostwriter if they ever listen. I think it's awesome, great. Please, by all means, you know, by all means, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you listen to my podcasts, which I believe you do, thank you. Um, you're awesome, and I will try to get those out in a timely manner moving forward. Anyways, that's not about today's show. Today's show actually is not about that topic, but I just wanted to give props. I want to give it a shout out and say thank you. Like I always do, I appreciate my listeners. I appreciate you tuning in, and I appreciate all of you that send in emails and also contribute to our cause, to our mission, to our plight. This is awesome. I appreciate you for it. So thank you again. In case I don't say it enough. Okay, today's show is actually interesting, which got me thinking because, if some of you have been following, I do have a daughter at home, still in her teenage years. And it's kind of a conundrum because she's like super smart, book smart, but not life smart. But she still lives in a certain fantasy of things, which I guess is sweet in some regards, but in other regards, not so much. But she's still living in that whole, oh, well, if it happens in movies and happens on TV, it must be real. And, she likes to play out these scenarios because she, for some reason, has an idea that these are stuff that actually happens. Anyways, sadly, though, she's realizing when she checks off these boxes that, indeed, it is just a bunch of fluff for Hollywood. But, for some reason she has to do this. But it's funny because I can't really blame her because I think we were all like that at one point in our teenage years. We would watch these movies that relate to our age, and we would watch these TV shows and everything else. And because we are so inexperienced on the world, I think for some reason we always had a notion that, oh, well, this is how it should be, and this is how it is, and if I do this, this will happen. We get sold on these ideas, these fantasies that we don't realize are fantasies at the time. We figure it's like an instruction manual. It is a book course by course, step by step book about what should happen if you do certain things. But lo and behold, that's not the case, right? As a lot of us can attest to, these things in these shows that we watch growing up aren't reality. These events, these overall results, just aren't something that comes to fruition. It's not something that happens. And I guess it's interesting seeing it from the other angle for my parents, my listeners out there that are parents. You know, when we're seeing it from their age, we see it differently. But it's interesting seeing stuff on the other side, watching them go through this, and you sit there and you shake your head, and it's matter as you try to tell them it's not the real world and not how it is. They don't want to listen to you, right? Because regardless, 99% of the teenagers, 99% of the teenagers believe they know everything, they know how it is, they don't need to be told anything because they know everything. Even when they should know better because they're actually educated, they don't get it, right? Like, my kid's super bright, super intelligent, 18, second year university on a scholarship. Doesn't get much better than that, in my opinion. But all that aside, when it comes to life and the real world stuff, it's like completely, out of touch. So she has this brilliant idea to go out to a frat party in PJs with friends that she barely knows, and she thinks this is okay because she's trying to live out that checkbox fantasy of, oh, well, it's a frat house, the frat boys, and blah, 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 blah. She has this illusion in her head of what all this is about. And I guess she hasn't seen enough of the dark side of life, unfortunately, but fortunately, because I really wouldn't want her to be touched by that. But at the same time, she puts herself in these situations that are just stupid, right? And I'm hoping it's kind of one of those, okay, check that box, I'm done with that. Let's not tempt fate and be done with it just so we can say we've been there, done that, wasn't all that was cracked up to be, let's move on. So this is what I'm hoping. This is what I'm hoping as she goes to this after Halloween frat party bullshit, that she thinks is all Hollywood and friggin' like it is in the States, and how she sees all this stuff on her TV and all that crap. And she gets over it and moves forward and starts making better decisions. Like, I understand, it's fine, whatever. But let me tell you, anybody that's been a teenager that has actually set themselves up for these scenarios to be able to live out this fantasy will attest to the fact is that 9 times out of 10, it's not what it made out to be on the TV screen. Not what it looks like, the way Hollywood makes it, So, all right, fine. Hopefully you get out unscathed, right? It's interesting. I guess it's just human nature. If you have a little bit of an imagination, you try to think about the best possible outcome in a scenario that is almost romantic or adventurous and whatnot, and for whatever reason, we feel that we need to have that adventure, that excitement, that difference, that change of pace. But at what risk, though, right? Because there is a bad element out there that knows that people want to actually play out those elements. There is a bad element that will set up those scenarios just so they can victimize, naive people. And it's unfortunate that the world's like that we can't just live in harmony, and we can't just live with a level of security and a level of peace and a level of kindness, So my advice to my parental listeners out there, if you have any kid that's preteen, going into teens, or even in their early 20s that is completely out of touch with the world and the real world and how it works, you should definitely prepare to warn them about all the angles of what could possibly happen out there. A lot of people like to have the philosophy of, oh, not in my backyard, it's rainbows and unicorn farts. No, I'm sorry, but you always have to be prepared. If you've got any messages from a lot of my episodes, the fact is you should be prepared. Because I can attest from my own experience, not being prepared, you get fucked. Like, seriously, look at my present employment situation. I got fucked royally at no fault of my own, and that's a little frustrating. That's a little frustrating when you have to go through that. It's very frustrating when, you're not prepared, you didn't brace yourself, you didn't, you know, get the information you needed, didn't get the game plan in play, you didn't get all that stuff like that, and a curveball out of left field comes at you, and you're completely screwed because of it. And that can happen a lot in life. So my advice, either as parents or even in general for yourself, is yeah, have a backup plan. Have something in place that will basically, you know, prepare you for the unexpected. I'm not saying have your world on a tilt and like be paranoid. I'm just saying be smart about, if like plan A, plan B, plan C, if for some reason this doesn't work out, what recourse do I have? And make sure that's a solid recourse. Put that recourse parallel to your existing plan. Like, I want to revert back, of course, to my major life event that happened in fall of 2023. The thing is that I was putting a game plan in play, and just as I was about to execute that plan as a safeguard, I got fucked. And that's when everything fell apart, and I'm like, holy shit, are you kidding me? Wow. Like, thankfully, I pulled out of that by the skin of my teeth, which is good because I was concerned about that one. But, at the same token, I'm just like, holy shit, if I didn't pull through that, if I didn't get through, implementing that plan and getting it, get going and stuff like that, it probably would have been a lot worse. Thankfully, though, I was able to pull through, execute a minor backup plan, which is good. But it is what it is, right? You have to put that in motion long before shit hits the fan. Okay, all that aside, let's not get off track. So, as far as living these ideas and fantasies in youth, or even people that really had a sheltered life moving forward outside of youth, they have this idea about, about the world through the goggles of TV and movies. And that's great and all to, fantasize about certain things. But at the same time, you got to be smart about it, right? You got to be smart. You got to evaluate the situation and go, is it really worth it? And what possible outcome could I be getting out of this scenario because I did this, right? What possible experience, what possible enjoyment, what possible anything could I be getting? But teenagers don't think like that. They don't think about cause and effect. They don't think about the outcome of their actions. It's unfortunate that they're basically living in that la-la world of, I'm impenetrable, I'm invincible, blah, blah, blah. So they don't think about the consequences of a lot of things. They're like, oh, that would be fun. Oh, that would be interesting. Let's go ahead and do that. Versus covering all the angles. Like I say in my daughter's situation, is it a good idea to run around in heavily take-offable clothing in an environment by a bunch of horny teenage boys in a frat house where everybody has a level of secrecy and are out for their own selfishness, and be this fun, flirtatious, little girl in that environment where there's probably drugs and alcohol involved, but I think that would be a good time. Okay. As a dad, I don't want to think about the scenarios. I don't want to think about the outcomes. I don't want to think about the worst case scenarios. But there's nothing about that situation that says to me wholesome. There's nothing about that environment and that setup that says, oh, That's my good little Christian girl doing the right thing, being wholesome, being virtuous, being awesome. There's nothing about that environment that says, oh, that's a good thing. You know what? Nothing at all about that. That says, that's a good idea. Nothing at all. But for some reason, this is the card she wants to play. And that's fine. If that's the card she wants to play, that's the card she wants to play. I don't agree with it. I think it's stupid. But that could just be the dad in me. But I don't think, even on the opposite side of that, even if I wasn't a dad, where I see the logic in how that could actually be a good thing. In any scenario. Like, don't give extra leniency to boys because they're boys. Right? I don't think that would be a good idea, even if it was the opposite of a guy going to, a fraternity. I just don't. I think it's a bad idea all the way around. But, to each his own. People, for some reason, want to live out these fantasies, want to live out these ideas, want to live out all this stuff like that, and it is what it is. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong, doesn't necessarily mean it's in the best environment or wholesome environment. It's just one of those things that, frankly, people just got to get out of their system. And they do, eventually, What I'm saying to you, my parental listeners, is the fact is that, teach your kids to logic flow a lot of things. Teach your kids to think about all the scenarios. Teach your kids to logically look at a situation and then evaluate every possible outcome of where their original idea was and what they, expect the long outcome to be, right? That's what it comes down to. They have this idea that, okay, I'm going to engage in this because of this. This is what you're hoping your outcome is going to be. Okay, well, you're starting here, and you figure your outcome's going to be there. Idiot. You figure your outcome's going to be there. Is it going to be realistic? Is it make sense? Probably not. And what if you want that outcome and it doesn't happen? What are you going to do then? What if it turns south? What if you go there, even if guy or a girl, you go there, you see somebody that's cute, you make a move on them, their significant other shows up and wants to beat the crap out of you. What do you put yourself in that situation? Do you know the people well enough that you went to this event with to have your back? That's the other question. Do you know those people well enough to know they will have your back? That has to be pretty solid relationship to be able to fall back on the fact that those people will be there for you. And when we're young and naive, we have a tendency to trust everybody that's nice to us. We have a tendency to accept that everybody's going to be there and everybody's going to be kind and everybody's going to do the right thing. But that's not always the case. Like, hell, I've had to have relationships built on like 5+ years or even longer before I can actually truly say that certain people had my backs. And then again, in the long run, 20+ years later, they still betrayed me. But that's another story for another show. But as far as I'm saying is that just make good choices, be smart about it. If you're going to go into a volatile environment that you're unsure of, make sure that your backup is solid. Make sure there's no guesswork when it comes to your backup, like who you're going with and everything else. To go on a whim in an environment that's questionable, like, you kind of put it upon yourself if something goes wrong. And let's be honest, as much as you like to say, oh, well, it's not my fault, it's not, it's nothing I did wrong, it's the problem of the other people that did the bad things. Okay, but the thing is, that's all great and stuff to say, but you're still kind of part of the equation because you didn't make the smart move of getting involved in that environment or putting yourself in that situation. So is it truly the other party's fault because you got violated, you got attacked, you got put into a bad situation? It's not exactly their fault that you decided that it was okay to show up in your bras and underwear, so to speak, or whatever the case may be, completely vulnerable type attire into a lion's cage of hungry lions looking to get their rocks off, and you thought it was a great idea to, hang a piece of meat around your freaking neck in that lion's cage of hungry lions. Think about it. It's instinctual. It's not necessarily a decision process. So really be smart about where you decide to put yourself into in any environment, especially when you're young and naive. Think about it. Parents, educate your kids. Talk to them. Educate them. Make sure they know what the fuck's going on. That's all I gotta say. Don't leave it for them to figure out all the time. Like, if you haven't had these experiences, then research them. Great living out a idea or fantasy or concept or whatever from a movie or a TV show sounds fanciful and excellent, but that's not realistic, and that's not how the world works. It's, not to make everybody paranoid, but be smart about it. The world's a pretty fucked up place, especially when we have wars going on, people are losing jobs, the rich are getting richer, they don't care about the working class. It's like a complete inequality across the board, and then you have a whole bunch of other factors going into this, which is just making a powder keg. People are going to get a lot more savage and a lot more feral, and some people have given up. They're thinking, fuck it, the world's coming to an end, I'm going to do what I want. So you have to look at all those factors and the temperament and, of course, the attitude of the world that we're in, and especially today. Prepare your kids, prepare yourself. Anyways, that is my speech for today. I'm hoping you got some tidbits on that one. I hope you got some useful information. Just be safe, be smart, be safe. No fanciful fantasy or imagination or concept or whatever that you have in your little nugget thinking that it's going to be like it shows on the TV screen is the way it is. Don't risk the fact of putting yourself in jeopardy because you want to live out that concept. It's not worth it. You have a lot more in your life to live. You have a lot more in your life to do. And it's not worth some stupid concept to check a box, to do that kind of thing. That's all I'm saying. Just use your head. Anyways, that's about it. Hey, I'm your host, Mad Morgan. I want to thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Car Musings. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Love you for it. It's funny. We've had a sudden boost of numbers. I was checking the analytics recently, actually just yesterday, and I'm like, wow, okay, there's been a boost. So I have to thank you out there that have been sharing and telling people about us and everything else. I don't care who listens to us. If I help you in some way, if we can be here for you, give you the resources, give you the information, help you get through the struggle day to day, that's excellent, and that's awesome. So tell more people about us, and if you have the means, by all means, I'm begging now. The thing is that this is not a free ride spending money. This is survival money. So, if you can, give some donations, help us out, go to themadmorgan.com. I realized that the Support Us link was removed from the mobile. It's back again, so I fixed that. Now, the other thing is I made sure that everything's legible, it's readable, everything's good. So, if you can, by all means, please do. I would appreciate it. My family would appreciate it because we're going through a struggle right now. And thank you in advance for that. If you can't, because you're hurting too, and you can't spare a few bucks, just tell people about us, share us, everything else. I would appreciate that as well. And I know a bunch of you have been doing it because I've seen the numbers. So thank you again. Anyways, I'm your host, Mad Morgan. Thank you for listening to another episode of Car Musings. And until then, keep your integrity in check. Be well, and I'll see you next episode. Bye for now.